And joining me here in the studio now to discuss this further is Ambassador Joey Hood. He's a former senior U.S. diplomat, has served as ambassador to Tunisia and as acting director of Iranian affairs at the State Department. And we're also joined by Hassan Ahmadian, an associate professor at the University of Tehran. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Ambassador, let me begin to talk to you about these threats against Oman. Today, Scott Bessent threatened Oman with sanctions if they indeed help Iran impose this tolling system. Yesterday, we heard from Donald Trump saying he was going to blow him up if they helped Iran control the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, this is a very old ally of the U.S. They signed this Treaty of Amity and Commerce in 1833. One of America's really oldest allies. Was this a well-planned, executed threat on Donald Trump's behalf?
No, I don't think so. And I think this was a case of Donald Trump once again engaging in hyperbole. And so he didn't literally mean to blow them up, but maybe to blow up their relationship. And Scott Bessent made that clear as he detailed what that would mean. It would include economic sanctions, and not against just Oman, but any country that would participate in such a mafia protection scheme like what is being proposed. And what I've been saying here for a while is we can just remove Donald Trump entirely from this entire equation, really, because the rest of the world has come together to say we believe in freedom of navigation everywhere, including in the most critical straits around the world. And so that's why you've not seen any government issue any statements in support of Iran's scheme. And yes, there have been a few ships that have paid the ransom or they've coordinated in some way with Tehran in order to get through the strait. But that's just like businesses in New York coordinating with the mafia so they don't get bombed. It's not a sustainable solution.
Professor Ahmadian, these threats against Oman, you actually had the Omani foreign minister mediating these talks between Washington and Tehran for a long time. As we mentioned, Oman, a very close ally of the U.S. How are these threats being perceived by Iranian officials, do you think?
Well, U.S. doing what U.S. does usually, bullying others who disagree with it. It's not, if the President Trump was not there, we wouldn't have had a war and we wouldn't have seen the situation in the Strait of Hormuz. The Americans are saying that, well, Iran is imposing this new mechanism. Well, they are under war. And those countries who dare to coordinate with the Iranians to use the Strait of Hormuz are being bullied by the United States not to. Oman is an old neighbor of Iran. They actually mediated the 2015 nuclear deal. They continued mediating only to be basically stabbed by the Americans before this war because they were very close, as per the Omani foreign minister.
You heard there the ambassador calling it negotiating or dealing with the mafia.
Well, that's the American perception. The world is not agreeing with them. They are coordinating with Iran. Iran is a sovereign nation. As per international law, it has a right to manage shipment under war, in times of war. That war was imposed on the country, and it is continuing in the form of a blockade, which is, according to international law, is an act of war. So we are under war, and international law allows Iran to manage shipment. It's not mafia. I mean, American mentality might be tacked to mafia-like, actions, but Iran doesn't have that right.
Let's bring in the ambassador here. The words that you're hearing here about Iran being allowed, actually having the right to control the Strait of Hormuz. You were talking about earlier removing Donald Trump from this equation. Well, then you had the U.S. military attacking Iran, Bandar Abbas here overnight. What's the message here then coming from the U.S. military if we indeed remove Donald Trump from this equation, as you mentioned?
Well, just to tie this back to the previous part of the conversation, the only country that has bombed Oman lately is Iran. So just so that viewers remember that. And in fact, it's kind of a crazy situation in which Iran has bombed all three of the mediators, Oman, Qatar, and Iran, and Pakistan, excuse me, in the past couple of years. No, look, you don't have to take my word for it. You can look at the UN Security Council resolution under draft that has like 135 co-sponsors. That's the highest number of co-sponsors any resolution has ever had in the UN. Just to show you the level of consensus around the world against this scheme. of trying to manage traffic through the strait. Now, in a war, obviously, a lot of things are going to happen. International law gets thrown out the window most of the time by belligerents on all sides. But what we're talking about is what happens after this war, and that the world has made very, very clear through statements, through the draft resolution, and through their actions that they're not going to accept Iran managing the strait.
If this is the message coming from the U.S., why does Iran insist on keeping control of the Strait of Hormuz, even now launching strikes on Kuwait?
Well, the attack last night by the United States on Bandar Abbas, the Iranian military saying was launched
Professor,
from Kuwait.
I'm so sorry I have to interrupt you. We're now going to go to a live event. We're going to go to the White House, a press conference by U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Let's listen in.
So, Peter.
Thank you, Dr. Bessent.
Yep.
How long until we see your signature next to President Trump's face on a $250 bill?
Well, again, as Treasury Secretary, I have two mandates for U.S. currency. At present, no living person can be on U.S. currency, and the currency must say, "In God we trust." So right now, there is proposed legislation in front of the House, in front of the Senate, to change the first requirement so that a living person, Donald J. Trump, could be on a $250 bill.
Press conference happening at the moment at the White House. This is U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. We heard earlier from him posting about these threats of sanctions on Iran, or on Oman, if they help Iran control the Strait of Hormuz. But I interrupted you there earlier, Professor. We were talking about the message that Iran is sending by keeping control of the Strait of Hormuz and even launching missile attacks on Kuwait.
Well, keeping control is, as I said, the Iranians see it very lawful according to international law under war. Last night, the United States attacked Iran's Bandar Abbas port, and the Iranians retaliated. The military announced that the attack came from a base in Kuwait, an American base in Kuwait, and so they retaliated as they did during the war. Now, when it comes to consensus in international law, I think it's good to know that resolution that was talked about is under, it's being basically talked about. There's no consensus on it. The consensus should have built, the United States should have built on consensus before waging a war of aggression on Iran. Now that the situation in the Strait of Hormuz is hurting its economy, all of a sudden it realized and, it dawned on it that there is international law and that it can go to the UN. But the ceasefire was clear. The ceasefire was meant to be the basis for an agreement. The United States tried hard to change the, developments on the ground to put pressure on Iran and change the situation.
And we're still waiting for that agreement to come into effect. But I want to broaden out the perspective here for a little bit. Ambassador, since you were in charge of Iranian affairs at the State Department, is there something more profound, an Iranian ideology that's at the core of the problem here, that dates all the way back to the hostage crisis at the American embassy in 1979? That's something that's still at the heart of this problem, this conflict between the U.S. and Iran.
I think you've answered your own question there. The United States government at the time was ready and was dealing with the new revolutionary government. And Khomeini just made a bad decision to allow the embassy to be invaded and for our diplomats to be taken hostage for 444 days. That then unnaturally caused a rupture in relations, and things have just gotten more and more sour over the years as Americans have been killed by Iranian proxies throughout the region, and then the United States has responded in those countries. This is the first time that an American president is taking the fight directly into Iran, and it is not easy. War is not easy.
I'm running out of time, but I want to get your response to that. Is there any kind of agreement that would end these years and decades of conflict that the ambassador is describing here?
Well, I think that if the United States respects Iran's sovereignty, that would happen. 2 times the Iranians chose their governments, one in 1951 and one in 1979. Both times the United States did coups only after 79. Their coup wasn't successful. In 53, it was successful, and they brought what the Iranians elected. After the revolution, they weren't successful. They want a puppet government in Iran. That's not going to happen. At least they won't have a friendly government in Iran under pressure for bringing it down and bringing a puppet government again in Iran. I think that's the core of the issue here, and that's why we have this animosity continuing.
Professor Hassan Ahmadian and also Ambassador Joey Hood, thank you so much for joining me in the studio.
Thanks you.